campers, theater sluts, indie film buffs, and everybody else. Normally, I like to address myself to everyone and everything and talk about more than politics. Unfortunately, this time, tonight, I can't do that. We have seen the Democratic National Convention. We have seen the first night of the, it's called the Republican National Convention, but let's face it, it's the Twitlerian National Convention because it has nothing to do with Republicans as much as it has to do with the entire family of those who I will not mention their names. We have been told that this election, we have to act like our lives depend on it because they do. And I agree with that philosophy. So, this show is me dedicated to that. And I hope you enjoy yourselves. I'm going to try to use humor, but Jesus Christ, it's getting hard. So let me start with a couple of quotes I pulled off Twitter from some of my friends and some people I don't know, but I thought were worth hearing. First, from my buddy Rocky Mountain Mike, who some of you may remember as being one of my earlier guests on the show. Mike said, "This Sunday's Jerry Falwell Jr. church talk is Sermon on the Mountain." If you don't get that, you really need to read a little bit more than you're doing. Our former senator from the great state of Minnesota, Al Franken, said the following: "After all the Republicans who spoke for Biden at the DNC, I've been trying to think of a Democrat who will speak for Trump this week at the RNC. Unfortunately for Trump, George Wallace is dead." Thank you, Senator Franken. That's a good one. This comes from at Middle Age Riot, or also as he's known as the Brilliant Comedy Jokes by John Hartzell, who says the following, and I am madly in love with this quote, so I'm really pissed off that I didn't come up with it. He said, "Dean Cain is Scott Baio without the talent, but so is Scott Baio." So there you go. This comes from none other than the real Donald Trump. And the only reason I'm using his name is because, it was under his name on Twitter. He said, and this goes back to January, so, take it for what it's worth. But he said, "Great honor, Reverend Jerry Falwell Jr. of Liberty University, one of the most respected religious leaders in our nation, has endorsed me." Okay, that was in January. Wonder how he's feeling about that endorsement now. And to follow that up, at Catherine Resistor says, "I'm learning more and more about evangelicals. I didn't know that threesomes were part of their religion. What else are these people doing that I don't know about?" I have to agree with Catherine. I would certainly like to know. It may be something that interests a lot of us, but for them, it's a no-no. So, bad Jerry Jr., bad Mrs. Jerry Jr., and congratulations to the pool boy. He seems to be doing quite well for himself. Finally, I'm going to quote The Daily Show. I haven't done that in a long, long time, but The Daily Show Twitter page says the following: "The RNC promised positivity and optimism. It delivered instead spawn of Satan." And that is true. What we have been the spawns of Satan, the Twitlerian family itself. But we'll get to more of that. I want to start out by talking about a debate I got into a few weeks ago with some folks on Facebook who were buying into that Joe Biden's a doddering old fool bullshit. They actually were believing his brain no longer functions, which if you support Twitler, and you can actually say that about Joe Biden, you got problems, dude. I mean, saying Joe Biden can't put together a coherent thought while you kiss Twitler's ass is, you got problems. I mean, really. This was supposed to be their excuse as to why they seem to think the Tangerine Turd would be a better candidate than Joe Biden. They also professed their belief in the fact that bicycle riding video where all the news people were shooting Biden as he rode his 10-speed with a group of other people and made jokes wearing a mask was, well, let's see. Some of them said it was a PR stunt and it didn't prove his health at all. They did say, however, they would wait for the convention to make that determination. Well, okay. The convention's over, and, well, my question for you assholes is, tell me, if you are the purveyors of honesty and decency that you want to make yourselves out as, how did Joe do? I mean, when have you ever heard Mango Mussolini deliver a speech as clear, honest, raw, and passionate, loving, coherent as Joe Biden's speech was the final night of the Democratic Convention? If you maintain your bogus excuse that the criminal in chief is still the more coherent, together, mentally stable person, all I can say is, and I say this with every fiber of my being, go fuck your greedy, racist, homophobic, misogynistic, fascist, maggot selves. I'm sorry, but Joe Biden proved he was the real deal. Understand, he was not my first choice. He was not my second choice for president. But I was overwhelmed watching the Democratic Convention. I never thought in a million years that could happen. But one of the reasons I was because Joe Biden's speech was amazing. It was so heartfelt, and I know it's a convention and it's supposed to be that, and your emotions are supposed to be played on. I've been around for a good while. I've seen a lot of conventions. This one really affected me deeply. And when you consider that there weren't thousands of people in a room being played to, and all the cheering and theatrical, the theatrics that generally brings up, what they did was amazing. The Democrats did something I never in a million years believed they could do. They proved they can put on a great show. Oh yes, I have to give special kudos to the host on the final night, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, for throwing the best shade of the evening. Julia said the following, and if you missed it, I'm really sorry because it was a wonderful moment. She said, "Just remember, Joe Biden goes to church so regularly that he doesn't need tear gas and a bunch of federalized troops to help him get there." How's that for the truth? Now, let's talk about who the DNC had speaking on behalf of former Vice President Biden and Senator Harris, who I am forever after going to refer to as Mamala, because it was just a perfect name for her. First of all, they did something that you don't usually find at a Democratic convention. You had former Republican Ohio Governor John Kasich and former Republican Secretary of State Colin Powell speaking on behalf of Joe Biden. Now, I have my problems with both Kasich and Powell for things they've done in the past, but there they were, speaking for a Democratic candidate, saying that the Republican candidate was a danger to us, which I happen to agree with. So yay them. But then there were the other speakers, and the words they spoke. I mean, you have to have no heart if you were not affected by these people. We had, let's see, Senators Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Chris Coons, Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker, Tammy Baldwin, Catherine Cortez Masto, and Doug Jones from Alabama. We had former Senator and former Secretary of State, as well as presidential candidate John Kerry. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Oh, I know people love to hate Nancy Pelosi, but Nancy Pelosi was great. She really tore into it. Representatives Jim Clyburn, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yes, the socialist who nominated Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders was getting votes. So somebody had to do it, and AOC did. And she was wonderful. Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester. Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. Yes, Gabby Giffords, the victim of a close-range gunshot wound to her head that she has spent years recovering from, and yet went up there and made an eloquent speech. That's some of who the Democrats had. We also had little minor trivial people. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. We had Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. Tony Evers, Michelle Lujan Grisham, Andrew Yang, former mayor of New York City, my hometown, Michael Bloomberg, who has never been able to decide whether he was a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. But there he was at the Democratic convention speaking on behalf of Joe Biden. Pete Buttigieg, Pete, who was running against Biden, speaking on behalf of Biden. There you go. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. And let's not forget some of the more lightweight people who spoke. Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. Barack Obama, who reminded us what it was like to have a real president. Former First Lady Michelle Obama. She was amazing. And let's not forget the real President of the United States, the person who should be sitting in the Oval Office, Hillary Clinton. She, again, was wonderful. Future First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden. Between the films they showed of the Biden family and the statements made by Dr. Biden and the kids and the grandchildren, whatever differences of opinion I may have with Joe Biden, if nothing else, the man is a smart, decent, caring human being. And that's something we haven't seen since the day Barack Obama and Joe Biden left the White House. We had President Jimmy Carter and his wife, former First Lady Rosalind Carter. We had Senator Kamala Harris, or as I've said, Mamala. She was wonderful. She was fucking wonderful. And then there was the final closing night speech by Joe Biden. Anyone who doesn't think he didn't prove just how coherent, just how smart, just how together he is dead from the neck up. You weren't paying attention, and you should have been. So, that was the Democratic National Convention. A surprise to me. It was a surprise to me that I not only wanted to watch it, but that I did watch the entire thing. Not to mention MSNBC's conversations during, before, after, which were really wonderful. Rachel Maddow. I mean, how many people have ever seen Rachel Maddow that emotional, that touched? She's a brilliant woman. She's a brilliant woman. But she doesn't like to express her emotions that openly on television, and she did. That tells you something. However, immediately following the Democratic Convention, I got to be nauseated once again by the furor initiated by the ignoramus in chief, created by him claiming the DNC excluded the words "under God." And for those of you who are listening, not watching, I'm doing the air quotes for "under God" from the Pledge of Allegiance at the convention. Okay, let's start with the first part, which is, that was a fucking lie. It was just more in his never-ending litany of bullshit. I mean, this son of a bitch makes shit up out of the top of his head, pulls it out of his ass, and people go, oh yeah, he said it. Except, it didn't happen. The pledge did include one nation under God. However, for Mr. Twitler and the other ignoramus of the Republican Party and the maggots who support them, I would like to give you all a little bit of a history lesson, okay? The words "under God" weren't added to the Pledge of Allegiance until the Red Scare of the 1950s. Prior to that, the original pledge read, "One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." The original pledge took root in the late 19th century when Francis Bellamy, the son of a Baptist minister and a former preacher himself, accepted a job with the family magazine Youth's Companion, which to me sounds like it would have been a good Jeffrey Epstein publication, but I digress. Bellamy was tasked with creating patriotic programs for school children ahead of the dedication of the Columbian Exposition in October 1892, which was also the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the New World. Kind of appropriate since he was another genocidal asshole responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of natives. Bellamy knew he would need a salute to the flag. He felt strongly that a pledge should invoke allegiance, especially so soon after the Civil War. His original pledge read like this: "I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." Tweaks came later. In one instance, the words were changed to "the flag of the United States," out of fear that immigrant children would not understand clearly which flag was meant to be saluted. Who knew there were maggots back then? Flash forward to 1954. During the height of the Red Scare, when the Reverend George Dougherty, and I apologize if I got the pronunciation of that name wrong, but I really don't care. He was a Scotsman who had been brought to the United States in 1950 to become pastor of the New York Avenue Presbyterian Church, a historic house of worship in downtown Washington, which Abraham Lincoln actually attended. To omit the words "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance, he said, is to omit the definitive factor in the American way of life. Dougherty said this from the pulpit. Now, he felt that under God was broad enough to include Jews and Muslims, although he discounted those non-believing atheists because, he didn't quite understand that the country he'd lived in for all of 4 years was a secular nation, not a Christian nation, not a religious nation, a secular nation. So, once again, the Pledge of Allegiance did not contain the words, "One nation under God," until President Dwight Eisenhower made it so in 1954. In other words, what I am gently and lovingly trying to say is, get the fuck over it, you ignorant assholes. It was said, and it doesn't really matter. Okay? It just doesn't. Schittler kept talking about how the Democratic Party wants to drag the country into the dark. That's a direct quote. Into the dark. Now, someone, correct me if I'm wrong, but based on my years of picking up the subtle messages Republicans like to deliver, what that sounds like to me is, if you don't vote for me, the scary black people are gonna take over. I don't know. That worked pretty well when the scary black guy was Barack Obama. I certainly felt better. The remarks came at the outset of the Republican National Convention as the president finds himself trailing Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden in national polls and a number of surveys in swing states. Now, I don't put a lot of stock in national polls, but it does make me feel a little bit better to know that there is, at the moment, this big difference. Twitler's remarks were made as part of yet another incoherent speech containing even more than the usual pack of lies that included several misstatements, including that Senator Elizabeth Warren dropped out of her party's presidential primary the day before Super Tuesday's contests. That's not actually true. She did compete in Super Tuesday. She just didn't happen to win any states, so she dropped out later. But when you're Adolf Twitler talking to a room full of maskless maggots, what do facts matter? Facts never matter to these people. My personal message to the gentleman who occupies the Oval Office is as follows. You, sir, live in a continual state of delusion, enabled by people as ignorant, greedy, and corrupt as you. So please don't, for 1 minute, forget. Most of us see that. And kindly remember this kind of important point. You lost the popular vote in 2016. You lost it by almost 3 million votes. You are Putin's puppet, not a president. Which brings us to this week's Republican National Convention, which in reality, let's face it, is nothing more than the Twitler National Convention. Now, as opposed to the Democrats, let's look at some of the speakers who are being featured this week. Oh, this is fun. Let's start with Melania. Melania, who the secret tapes are proving is not real fond of her husband, but there's Melania, and I have to say, with all that plastic, how she doesn't melt under the hot lights is beyond me. Then, of course, we get Ivanka, Eric, Tiffany, and Donnie Jr. In addition, let's not forget Donnie's girlfriend and former Fox News host, Kimberly Megaphone Guilfoyle. I put in the megaphone because if you heard her screaming, you would understand that. That woman screamed every fucking word she spoke. I've got a question for her, by the way. Why do Republicans need to shout? I mean, are you afraid no one will hear? Are you afraid if people actually hear what you're saying, rather than having your eardrums bleed, they'll realize that in point of fact, you have no plans other than to destroy democracy and hand everything over to corporate interests? And after that we get Eric's wife, Lara Trump. Ooh, every Trump, somebody said, and I'm not sure this is true, but somebody said even Tiffany was going to speak, which is amazing. All they need is Barron, and they've got the whole family except for Mary. Why no Mary? I wonder why. Then we get the politicians. Okay, the Republican politicians speaking on behalf of their fearful leader. And you've got Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Oh, he's a great one. Nikki Haley, Ben Carson, that genius. Rudy Giuliani. Oh, my favorite former New York mayor. I stayed in New York just so I could vote against that motherfucker in his last election. And interestingly, another politician, not that Trump is really a politician, but another one who thought maybe if he was clever enough, he could sneak in an extra term after September 11th, because he, after all, was America's mayor. Let's see, Karen Pence. Oh, Mother is speaking. Can't wait for that one. Kellyanne Conway, the soon-to-be ex-aide, variety of Trump campaign officials. But here's where my heart just bursts with joy. Mark and Patricia McCluskey. They, in case you do not know it, are the infamous St. Louis couple who pointed firearms at Black Lives Matter protesters earlier this summer. And then again, there's going to be evangelist Franklin Graham, who I guess will be representing the Christian rights, contradiction in terms if there ever was one, in lieu of Jerry Falwell Jr., who, as we all know, is busy cleaning his pool. Current and former GOP elected officials set to speak include Senator Tim Scott, Senator Joni Ernst, one of my favorite morons, Representative Jim, no, I didn't see any child molestation when I was, a college coach, Jordan, former Ambassador Nikki Haley, Governor Kristi Noem, the man who was going to speak, then wasn't going to speak, and now has decided to speak again, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. You do remember Moscow Mitch, the guy who's refused to bring the relief bill for the COVID pandemic, which the House passed in May, to the Senate floor. Yeah, he's going to speak now. So, how much joy can that be? Representative Dan Crenshaw, I'll give you a hint who he is. If you're watching, I'm covering one eye. Senator Rand Paul, another great mistake from the state of Kentucky. Representative Kevin McCarthy, Senator Tom Cotton. The only one missing from this pathetic list of ass-kissers, con artists, and traitors is the one person behind it all, Vladimir Putin. He won't be speaking, at least as far as I know, but then again, the week's not over. And then there is that special event even the Democrats couldn't have topped had they tried. The tangerine turd himself, who will be speaking every night of this motherfucking convention. This should give every comic on the planet enough material to last through the 2024 election cycle. Now, on Monday night, the first night of the Twitler convention, he claimed Democrats are using the coronavirus to steal the 2020 election, arguing closures of businesses and demands for mail-in voting are not driven by a pandemic that has killed nearly 180,000 Americans in 5 months. No. It's to defeat him. That's why they're caring about this pandemic. He said, what they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Coming from Trump, those words are about as funny as anything I've ever heard. Remember who stole it in 2016 and is trying to steal it again this year by, destroying the post office, and Republican voter suppression was a joke in 2016 compared to what they're trying to do now. So he's got a lot of cojones on him, I'll give him that. They're using COVID, he said, to defraud the American people, all of our people, of a fair and free election. We can't do that. I don't know if any of you can hear my dogs upstairs barking, but what I'm saying must be making them so sick that they can't stand it. They ought to come down here and join me. Here's something I don't understand, which I don't know, maybe one of you can explain to me. On September 11th, 2001, almost 3,000 Americans were killed in the attacks on the World Trade Center. Another couple of thousand first responders died in the years that followed due to complications from the crap they ingested in trying to save lives that day. For that, Republicans got this country into a war which cost, and is still costing, tens of thousands more American lives, not to mention the ones Donnie's hero, Vlad Putin, has put a hit on, which, if you'll remember, Twitler still hasn't commented on, and also caused the death of hundreds of thousands of Iraqis. This for a terrorist attack which Iraq had absolutely nothing to do with. Okay. But this week, with the known deaths from COVID in this country passing 176,000 American lives, and that's the known deaths. We all know, or most of us know, and will admit, the numbers are higher. But okay, let's say it's 176,000. A CBS News poll carried out on their behalf by an organization called YouGov says 57% of Republicans surveyed agreed with the statement that the number of coronavirus deaths in the U.S. was, and this is a quote, acceptable. According to this same poll, 10% of Democrats felt the same way. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not a big believer in polls. I've never been polled in my entire life. I don't happen to know anyone who has ever been polled in their life. So, it's hard for me to buy into it. However, the fact anyone could think that 176,000 dead Americans is acceptable not only makes me sick, it scares the ever-living shit out of me. I mean, has this country, has the United States of America really sunk that low? If you can figure this out, explain it to me, because honest to God, I don't get it. When I started recording this broadcast, I wasn't feeling all that well. I had a massive migraine, and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to put my thoughts, such as they are, in coherent form. I was especially concerned because I wanted to talk about this latest police shooting of Jacob Blake, a 29-year-old black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Blake was supposedly tasered before Officer Rustin Shesky put 7 bullets in Blake's back as he tried to enter his SUV in front of his 3 children. That's right. They shot him 7 times in front of his 3 children. Supposedly Blake may have, it's a big question mark, had a knife on the floor of his SUV. Now how the cop behind him who put 7 bullets in Mr. Blake's back saw this is beyond me. But hey, what do I know about law enforcement? Obviously, Officer Shesky doesn't know much about law enforcement either. Blake is now at least partially paralyzed, but he's still hanging on. He's still alive. Meanwhile, Officer Shesky has been placed on administrative leave. And again, this is something that needs air quotes because, ooh boy, administrative leave. What the fuck does that mean? Is he still being paid? The case has been turned over to the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation, who will work with the FBI. The FBI that is under the jurisdiction of the quote-unquote Department of Justice. So I think we can expect jack fucking shit from that. I have nothing else to say. You can tell me Blue Lives Matter until you're blue in the motherfucking face. I'm sorry, Black Lives Matter, because they're the ones that are threatened the most in this country. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old Twitler-supporting white militia member whose photo was unbelievably taken in the front of a crowd at a Twitler rally, go figure, murdered 2 Kenosha protesters, people who were protesting the shooting of Mr. Blake. He shot them with his AR-15 rifle, which of course in the open carry state of Wisconsin is allowable. Here's where it gets beyond sick. When Rittenhouse fell to the ground while being pursued by protesters attempting to disarm him, he continued shooting. Afterwards, this 17-year-old psychopath was actually able to walk away, rifle still in hand, and he walked past cops in armored vehicles while people were shouting, "He just shot them! He just shot people!" The law enforcement officers did absolutely nothing. Nothing. To me, this is shades of what happened when the white militia people with their rifles brandished took over the Michigan State House and nothing was done to them. Again, I will say exactly what I said then to you now. What do you think would have happened had those armed people been black or brown? I think we all know the answer. I'm just so beyond fed up, and I feel like such shit. I can't let it go. Now, when it comes to assholes of the week, as I've noted before, there are certain people who are so regularly assholey, I can't even include them in the competition. But today we're going to have a grammar lesson, okay? Last night, in his speech at the Trump family convention, Mike Pence, you remember him, mother's boy, made the following statement. He said, "Make America great again. Again." This makes no sense. Think about it. 4 years ago, your entire campaign and the name you've given your brain-dead racist supporters, MAGAs, stands for Make America Great Again. Well, if over the past 4 years you made America great again, why would you need to make it great again again? It's already great, if you believe it's great. No sane person could possibly believe that with almost 180,000 dead Americans, people of color being shot in our streets by police with nothing being done about it. But hey, what the fuck? And here's one of my favorite, and by favorite I mean non-favorite things, going on at this Republican convention of racism, because that's what it is. Let's scare you of all the evil, scary black people. I think I said that earlier. I'll say it again. It's worth it. One of the things that's being done is they had been accusing peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters of violence and looting and the murder of police, all of which, in point of fact, was perpetrated by the white supremacist Boogaloo Boys. Get that? Far-right, white supremacist Boogaloo Boys. But it's easier to blame those Black Lives Matter protesters because that makes us look good, right, if we're Republicans? So let's do that. I mean, what better way to play to your base's racist fears? Because if you're still saying, make America great again after you've supposedly made America great again, what it really means is you failed. Why is that so difficult to understand? I mean, when it comes to Mike Pence, mother's boy, he's not just an asshole of the week, the month, the year, the decade. He's just one more in a long line of Twitler, ass-kissing, ignorant, racist, homophobic, xenophobic, motherfucking assholes. So, for Mr. Pence and Mother, because you're as bad as he is, I have one more fuck you to give, and I'm giving it now. So there you have it. The reason many of us, hopefully most of us, believe that Black Lives Matter is because the vast majority of people who are being murdered by the police in this country are black or brown. It's not me. I mean, I've got long hair and a beard, so I'm still got that hippie thing going on, and yet I'm a shitload safer. So, yeah, Black Lives Matter. And we need to keep saying it and never, ever let these motherfuckers forget that. Because it's important and it matters. And I have no words, because I'm really, really fed up and disgusted. And if I feel that way, I can only imagine how some of my friends in the black community are feeling. The threat, the anger. This has got to stop. And it's not going to stop if you know who spends another 4 years in the White House. It's only going to get worse. So that, in my opinion, is one of the most important reasons we desperately need Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to win this November. Finally, we come to this week's battle for my choice of asshole of the week. Now, the usual candidates, Twitler, Barr, McConnell, they're perpetual. So let's be fair. They're always assholes. They're always going to be assholes. So, that's a weekly, that's a daily, that's an hourly event. That's why I don't include them in this, unless there's something so egregious that one of them has done, and I don't know how much more egregious they can get, but they're not in the running for this contest. So this week's special prize for Asshole of the Week goes to, come on, Postmaster Genital, I'm sorry, I meant Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, the man giving the Republican Party what they've been working toward since Ronald Reagan was president, the destruction of the United States Postal Service. Why? So they can privatize it, further enriching corporate interests in this country. Because after all, the people don't matter, corporations do. And while I'm at it, I have to get in Rush Limbaugh, who, after supposedly watching, the Democratic National Convention said, "We're supposed to feel sorry for Biden because his wife and children died." Rush, I thought you had cancer. I thought you were supposed to be dead a while ago. Can't you just do us all a favor and leave this mortal coil? I mean, it's time. You need to go. We need to be rid of you. We need not to hear your voice again, because you are just such a slime ball. So you, for that comment alone, are first runner-up to Postmaster Genital, and I'm going to stick with that, Postmaster Genital Louis DeJoy. However, we have other backup assholes of the week too. Here are my runner-ups. We've got actor, kinda sorta, Scott Baio. We already mentioned Scott Baio earlier in the show, but it's always good for a laugh. Let's go for former football player and celebrity apprentice suck-up Herschel Walker, the self-proclaimed devout Christian who refuses to admit Mango Mussolini is a racist. Why? Because he was nice to him. Mr. Walker, I don't know how far up your ass your head is, but really, it's just so sad and so pathetic. I can't even begin to, you remind me of another Heisman Award winner who had his head up his ass too. What was his name? OJ something. And finally, my last asshole of the week runner-up is Michael Lindell. Who, you might ask, is Michael Lindell? Michael Lindell is the My Pillow guy. He is also a huge Trump supporter. There's got to be a joke in there regarding his pillows, Trump, and why he supports him. But all I can say for Mr. Lindell is the following. I have tried your pillow. I've never tried to sleep on it because touching it, feeling it in Bed Bath & Beyond was more than enough. Why anyone would buy your piece of shit product is beyond me. But then, why anyone would support Adolf Twitler is also beyond my comprehension. I may be losing my mind, or what's left of it, but that's pretty much what I have to say today. Last show was 2 hours. This one will be a good deal shorter because it's just me, not my guests. But I would like to thank you for joining me. I hope you will join me again, where we will have wonderful guests. We will be funny. We will talk about topics other than politics, although at the moment politics is encroaching on every aspect of our lives. So until this election, I'm not sure how we get around that. But maybe we can do it in different ways, in different forms. So thank you for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you learned something, maybe about the flag, maybe about the Pledge of Allegiance. And please come back and join me next week for this show, The World According to Yoni, with me. Take care, have a great week, and let's hope we all survive it. Bye-bye.